This is CBN Newswatch.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for CBN Newswatch. I'm George Thomas. 18 years ago today, our nation changed forever when terrorists attacked us on our own land. On September 11, 2001, Muslim extremists killed 3,000 Americans after commandeering 4 passenger jets. And now, nearly 2 decades later, we still haven't forgotten. CBN News national security correspondent Eric Phillips is in Washington with a look at today's ceremonies. Eric.
And George, as you will remember, not only did they attack us on our own soil, but we're talking about 3 different locations: New York City, Washington, D.C., and Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And today, ceremonies were held in all 3 locations. The names of those who lost their lives were read, and there were bells rung in honor of all of those victims. President Trump gave a speech at the Pentagon today, during which he announced that he will be awarding the Presidential Citizens Medal posthumously to a man who saved thousands of lives during 9/11 in New York City. He acknowledged that he cannot erase the pain for families who are still feeling the sense of loss, but he made a promise that they'd never be forgotten. He also made a promise about those who attacked us.
And if for any reason they come back to our country, we will go wherever they are and use power the likes of which the United States has never used before. And I'm not even talking about nuclear power. They will never have seen anything like what will happen to them.
The president pointed out that just earlier this year, he passed a law funding the Victims Compensation Fund, which provides money to care for those who are suffering illnesses as a result of their involvement in 9/11, George.
Okay, terrific. Eric, thank you so much. Eric, joining us from our D.C. bureau. In other news, after President Trump fired John Bolton Tuesday, many are trying to guess who will be his replacement and if this will mean a change in U.S. foreign policy. My colleague Dale Hurd looks ahead.
There are several names being put forward as possible successors to John Bolton. One is U.S. Ambassador to Germany, Richard Grenell. Grenell is reported to be campaigning for the role, but could be hurt by his long, close relationship with Bolton. Another is Bolton's former chief of staff, Fred Fleitz, who tweeted a photo of himself with the president shortly before Bolton's departure was announced. John Bolton's clashes with Trump over issues like Iran and North Korea were well known. Trump ally Senator Lindsey Graham says whoever the next appointee is, they must adapt to Trump's style.
I don't care if President Trump and Kim Jong-un go on vacation. If that's what it takes to give up the nuclear weapons, I'm okay with personal diplomacy that's unconventional.
Bolton's departure may mean a face-to-face meeting between Trump and Iran's leader in New York is possible.
Well, one thing we know Ambassador Bolton and the president disagreed on was whether the president should even contemplate sitting down with the Iranian President Rouhani at the UNGA in a couple of weeks. Now that he is out, that's sort of one big obstacle removed from the potential for that meeting.
And the way John Bolton left the White House and challenged the president on Twitter may mean this fight is not over.
And this may be an indication that Ambassador Bolton is not somebody who is going to go quietly into the night. He had some serious policy disagreements with the president and with the administration, and he may be vocal about them now that he's returning to the private sector.
Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Thank you, Dale. Conservative Republican Dan Bishop won the race for an open congressional seat in North Carolina, defeating Democrat candidate Dan McCready. Bishop is a state senator who aligned himself closely with President Trump. Some political analysts considered the race to be a referendum on the president, and Bishop's narrow victory in a historically strong Republican district could be a sign the president faces a tough race in 2020. The 6th national death related to e-cigarettes and lung disease has been confirmed. Health officials in Kansas said a 50-year-old woman died Tuesday from severe respiratory illness due to vaping. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention released a report, by the way, last week saying there have been more than 450 cases of vaping-related illnesses in 33 states. Deaths have now occurred, by the way, in California, Illinois, Indiana, Minnesota, and Oregon. While the investigation continues, the CDC is urging people to stop vaping or using e-cigarettes. Jared Wilson, an associate pastor and mental health advocate at Harvest Fellowship in Riverside, California, took his life Monday. Wilson was open about his ongoing struggle with clinical depression and suicidal thoughts. He leaves behind 2 children and a wife. Jared's wife, Julie, shared this message on Instagram. Quote, "No more pain, my Jerry, no more struggle. You are made complete and you are finally free. Suicide and depression fed you the worst lies, but you knew the truth of Jesus, and I know you are by his side right this very second." Regent University's Dr. Fernando Garzon joins us now to discuss mental health and church leadership. Dr. Fernando, thank you so much for coming on the show. Your initial thoughts following this case of suicide?
It's a real tragedy. Anytime we see anybody commit suicide, it's always a sad event. And with pastors as the leaders of the flock, it's especially hurtful for a wide variety of people.
Yeah. Jared was in fact, we had him on our show not too long ago on Prayer Link with my colleague, Charlene Aaron. Pastor Wilson was very open about his ongoing struggle with clinical depression and suicidal thoughts. How important is it for people to be open about what they're feeling?
Mm-hmm. It's very important. One thing that depression does is it isolates people. They feel isolated inside. Nobody can really understand them and their experience. So being open and communicating with supportive people around you is something that helps to reduce depression's impact on a person.
I'm curious, sir, are cases of depression, are they different when it comes to being a minister of the gospel?
Ministers have unique pressures. Ministers are constantly giving out. They're in a situation where they're constantly critiqued. You can never give a perfect sermon. You can never do perfect ministry. There are always people questioning you. So a minister can be very lonely and isolated, more so than many people. Now, all of us can deal with loneliness, but ministers, because they're seen as spiritual leaders, many times have problems connecting with people around their issues and their struggles.
I know that looking back on the interview with the pastor that he had on a Prayer Link with Charlene Aaron, he was talking about the impact of cyber bullying and how social media has played a part in accentuating some of this. When you're dealing with these very personal struggles and you decide to be open, what impact is social media having as we have this discussion about mental health?
Social media is like piling on to someone who already has internal bullies inside. Depression creates a thought pattern which really the person bullies themselves, their standards, how they're doing. And so social media many times will just externalize the voices that they hear inside, and that makes it much worse.
Before we let you go real quickly, what should church leaders learn from his death?
Well, obviously our hearts go out to the family and anyone who suffers a loss such as suicide. One thing is, pastors are challenged. How do we find supports? How do we help the pastors both in terms of congregations to find people that they can talk to, feel supported by, and not feel like they're constantly giving, but actually that they're receiving? That's one thing. And another is not to be afraid to talk openly when you sense a pastor is depressed, when you sense a pastor is burning out, to openly talk about getting the mental health treatment that they need.
Yeah, I remember several years ago doing a story about the impact of burnout on the church and among pastors, quite tremendous. Yes. Regent University's Dr. Fernando Garzon, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Very welcome.
Okay, folks, we will be back with much more CBN News right ahead. Stay with us.
It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Young people, millennials, are flocking to church.
It's not an exaggeration to say that we love to meet them and that we love to know their stories.
Come home to the Southern Gospel Station from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern gospel favorites. CBN Southern Gospel. Available now at cbnradio.com.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls man, come with...
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes, too. And so much more! Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Welcome back to the CBN News channel. A high-level American delegation of evangelicals is meeting with Saudi Arabia's top leaders this week. It's all happening in the Red Sea port of Jeddah, where several prominent Christian leaders met with Saudi Arabian Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The delegation is led by New York Times bestselling author Joel Rosenberg. Reverend Johnny Moore, co-chair of President Trump's Evangelical Advisory Council, is also part of the group. CBN's Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell is also among those invited to attend the meetings. And Chris joins me live from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia right now. Chris, why did this delegation travel to the Royal Kingdom?
Well, great to be with you, George, from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. They came because they were invited. Actually, they were invited last year. For the first time, they met with Mohammed bin Salman last November. You may remember that was just 5 weeks after the murder of the Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. They met with him then. They were invited back to speak with the Crown Prince. They met with him yesterday. And ironically, as you know, they met with him on the eve of the 18th anniversary of 9/11. They actually thought there was an appropriate time because they believe that Saudi Arabia has made significant advances in what it was 18 years ago and how many of the perpetrators of 9/11 came from Saudi Arabia. And right now they're making strides against what they call Islamist extremism.
You mentioned this is the delegation's second visit to the royal family. What was their visit with Mohammed bin Salman like this time around? And what changes did you see and hear there?
We couldn't get to couldn't get inside the meeting itself, but our cameraman, Jonathan Goff, was there taking pictures of the meeting to a person. And there were two women in the delegation as well. They felt that Mohammed bin Salman was direct. He was engaging. He was very frank about a number of subjects. And so they were very impressed, not only with Mohammed bin Salman, but also the progress that Saudi Arabia is making in many of the societal reforms that you can see actually every day here.
Talk a little bit more about that. What kind of changes, as you know, today is the 9/11 anniversary, 18 years later. Saudi Arabia has always been the hotbed of radical Islamism, Wahhabism. What are you hearing in terms of any attempts to change, reform what they are exporting in terms of their faith around the world?
Well, I'll give you a few examples. First of all, I think there were 3,000 Wahhabi imams that Mohammed bin Salman fired. And we had another example is Etidad, which is actually a center in Riyadh, not too far from here, where they tackle Islamist extremism. Literally, it's a state-of-the-art center where they track social media and all sorts of platforms, and anything that they see that is radical Islamist, they track it. They try to interfere with it, and they try to reduce this extremism that they see. And let me give you one more example, George. I met with a lady last night. She's about 32 years old. She said that it has been just transformative about what it used to be like and what it is now, especially for women. You know, they used to have religious police here in Saudi Arabia that would actually strike women if they weren't dressed appropriately in Islamic garb. That's gone. They're off the streets. Now women are in the workplace. They're empowered. That term that they use right now. And she said it's really night and day. And she thinks that these changes for more freedom for women, for more freedoms for all of Saudi society is here to stay, and it's going forward.
Okay, Chris, my man, Chris Mitchell, our Middle East Bureau Chief, reporting from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Thank you for your insights, and thanks for coming on the show.
Great, George.
Okay, still ahead, we'll introduce you to a man using his car as a vehicle to share the good news of Jesus Christ.
prophecy thousands of years old.
We were called to be a light to the world.
Being fulfilled today. Discover how. Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life. Just call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he have, which color he is, this is what I'm doing.
See how the people of Israel are fulfilling prophecy
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
by sharing their knowledge
In Africa, in Asia, in South America, in East Europe.
and their love.
This is how we work. This is us.
Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com.
Get Protect Your Sleep and discover how to improve the quality of your life. A free DVD or booklet from the Christian Broadcasting Network.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
5 leading experts help remove the obstacles between you and restorative sleep.
When you don't get a restful night's sleep, you wake up with an accumulation of stress.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to CBN.com to get your free DVD or booklet today.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
You'll discover how food affects your sleep, how to put insomnia to rest, explore effective remedies for sleep apnea, and much more in Protect Your Sleep. Wake up to your best life and get Protect Your Sleep today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to CBN.com to get your free DVD or booklet.
Welcome back to the CBN News Channel. Folks who work in so-called gig economies got some good news today. Legislators in California passed a measure that puts contract workers on more firm footing. A new bill passed in the state Senate on Tuesday that requires companies like Uber and Lyft to treat contract workers as employees. This gives them access to benefits such as health care and paid time off. The bill would give hundreds of thousands of part-time California workers basic labor rights for the very first time. The bill heads back to the Assembly for a vote, and then it will go to Governor Gavin Newsom's desk, where he has signaled that he will sign it. Kenneth Drayton is in the business of sharing the gospel, and one day he hopes to do it from a pulpit. But for now, it's from the front seat of his car. Caitlin Burke takes a seat for the ride.
Hi, how are you today?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Beautiful day in New York.
Kenneth Drayton drives for Uber in New York City. It's a part-time job that lets him practice his full-time calling.
Any believer, any spirit-filled believer, their number one priority is a commitment to the mission of God and to the purpose of God on a daily basis.
Kenneth says he's always been involved in ministry and hadn't really considered this other line of work.
My oldest son said, why don't you try, Dad, why don't you try Uber? You know, it's a pretty decent income, it's a pretty decent amount of money. And at the time I said, well, you know, I said, I don't know. But then I looked into it, and then what it required in New York City is you need a TLC license, Taxi Limousine Commission. And it was kind of an expensive process. But then one day I was eating in a buffet in Brooklyn, and a voice I encountered in a voice that just said to me, go and get your TLC license. And it was clear, it was loud, and I looked around to see if anyone else in the buffet heard that, and it stood up in me. And I said, okay. I said, I perceive that this is the voice of the Lord speaking to me. So I obeyed.
After a year behind the wheel, he's pretty sure it was divinely appointed.
Many of them coming in and out of my car was perplexed, had issues, had concerns. And for some reason, I perceived that a lot of these individuals God was sending to me.
From the time a passenger slides into Drayton's back seat to the moment he drops them off, he says the Holy Spirit is present and guiding the conversation.
It's an awareness. It's an inner ear. It's wisdom, most of all. The Bible makes that clear also, that he that wins souls is wise.
Kenneth has no agenda other than obeying God. Sometimes that means talking to passengers. Sometimes that means staying silent. Either way, he trusts that the true winner of souls is at work.
God has many people working in the vineyards. So some water, some plants the seed, and depending on what the need is that God sees fit, and the Holy Spirit will determine how that seed grows.
Kenneth doesn't expect to be an Uber driver forever, but as of now, he hasn't been called to anything else.
I don't think Uber is the main focus. I think the main focus is God's divine will.
Caitlin Burke, CBN News, New York City.
Stay with us. There is much more of CBN News just ahead.
Introducing the CBN Bible from CBN.com. Now, an easier way to study the Bible and grow in your faith. Highlight your favorite verse. Read separate versions at a glance. Click and read a commentary. Or cross-reference your favorite verse using the Strong's Concordance. All the right tools to study the Bible, all in one place. The CBN Bible, available at cbn.com/Bible or the iTunes App Store.
It has the power to influence weight loss, boost your immune system, and improve brain function.
We've seen an explosion of data on the role of the gut microbiome in health.
The free Build a Better Gut booklet reveals the latest information about the gut microbiome. You'll discover how your gut affects the rest of your health.
The gut microbiome has been linked to depression and cancer and heart disease.
Learn how to build a stronger, healthier gut.
The microbiome, if it's in good composition, are really protecting us all the time from more invasive things.
Get the Build a Better Gut booklet, free from the Christian Broadcasting Network. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/buildabettergut.
You need to make sure that your microbes are working with you, not against you.
And if you order online, you'll get immediate access to the Build a Better Gut series, a digital copy of the booklet, and related bonus material. Build a Better Gut today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/buildabettergut for your free copy.
Here, we're committed to a heritage of rigorous scholarship dating back over 1,000 years.
And to a faith tradition dating back 1,000 more.
This is how we create a culture of inquiry where no topic is off limits.
And a culture of hope.
Anything's possible!
It's Christian leadership. And it's changing the world for the better.
It's higher learning.
It's greater knowing.
It's what makes us whole.
It's what makes us Regent.
Welcome back to the CBN News channel. Nia Franklin is a composer who now holds the title of Miss America. And she's made history on a few levels, by the way. Ephraim Graham brings us her inspiring story.
That powerful voice.
Nia Franklin, New York, you are Miss America 2019.
Helped Nia Franklin to earn the Miss America crown and a place in American pageant history.
I'm a part of history.
With Nia as Miss America, Chesley Christ as Miss USA, and Kaylee Garris as Miss Teen USA, for the first time in history, all are Black women.
Being 3 Black women holding the crown at the same time, what's that meant to you?
It's meant a great deal. It's been so great to share this with not only Kaylee, who's beautiful and has such a sweet spirit and personality, but also Chesley, because we're actually friends. We've been friends since 2016.
Wow.
So it's wonderful sharing this moment with her, and she's done so much for me. I mean, just letting me borrow gowns and interview outfits over the course of the years, especially when I was first competing.
Mm-hmm.
So to see her now reaching her dreams is just incredible.
Why is it still important that we make such a big deal about this moment in our history? I certainly thought it was worthy to be celebrated, and so did lots of magazines as well. But I know some people got some pushback, like, why are we still counting? Why does it still matter? Why is that important?
I think it's still important to count. I mean, I can't speak for the system that Chesley and Kaylee are in. I can't really speak to their system, but Miss America didn't even allow African American women to compete until the 70s. And I, Miss America, in the 9th one out of 92. Mm-hmm. So you do the math. That's not a great percentage as far as diversity. And so that's why this is a moment of celebration, because representation matters, and it's important that little girls across the country that are not only black women or women of color, but any minority, whether you're Asian or Hispanic, living in America, if you're a minority, it is important to see people in minority positions in national roles like Miss America. That's why we made such a big deal out of it when Barack Obama became the first president of color to be in that office. And to hold that position in office. So it's certainly something to be celebrated. And I said in the Oprah magazine, we were interviewed about 2 months ago, I said, we're going to keep counting until we can't count anymore. Because I really hope that this isn't the first and only time this happens. I hope it happens again, because for 91 years, this has never happened. For once, we're covering it the majority, and that's something that should in a way feel normal. And it didn't this time, and that's why it's celebrated. So I'm really excited to see if this can help invigorate other people to say, I can do it too.
And you, for a while, didn't think that you could do it. This was not on your path. What clicked?
Oh my gosh. My mom always told me I could do it. She's like, you can do it, Nia, you should try. And we got a couple of brochures in the mail. But I was like, no, I'm just going to focus on my career, my music career, working on my degrees. But when it came time to go to grad school, I realized how much debt I was in. And I was also looking for a way to be more social outside of just church in school, because one thing about grad school is I feel like it can be very lonely. For me, it was a way to make friends and have women in my life who were like-minded, who had similar goals and values to my own. And that's where the Miss America system came in. And I knew it was a scholarship organization as well, and I was in debt, so it just seemed like a perfect match.
Yeah, indeed. I want to get a little personal. Your father essentially nearly died, am I correct? And you helped to save his life. Tell us what happened.
Yes, so my freshman year of college, when I was studying at East Carolina University, I went home for Thanksgiving break. I was told to go to the intensive care unit at Baptist Hospital in Winston-Salem, and went into the room to find my dad fighting for his life. His kidneys were failing. He looked like a completely different person. He was so swollen, and I just immediately started crying and just didn't know what was happening. And so after 2 years of him battling this disease, in and out of the hospital, in and out of physical therapy, we thought he was getting better, but then he would relapse. Finally, the doctors thought that we should try a stem cell transplant. And so in 2013, they started looking up matches, and there weren't any in the public pool of applicants, donors. And so they started looking at family members, and my aunt was a match, but they also were saying, let's look at the children too. They're a little younger, prefer a younger candidate for these things, and I was a perfect match. So it just seems like such a miracle, and we definitely knew it was a work of God, and we're so grateful, because after this stem cell transplant, it was definitely a slow recovery process, but after 6 years, he's back working full time now, and he's still a little stiff. He was bedridden for a long time and not able to even get up and walk, so he's still a little stiff and can't do certain things, like he can't bowl, for example, because you have to kind of get down and squat. But we hope one day he will be able to do that, and it's just a continued process, but we're so grateful that he's here and that he's not battling the disease anymore.
And for more behind-the-scenes look at uplifting entertainment, please be sure to tune in to Studio 5 on CBN News Channel tonight, right here at 9:30 Eastern. Well, folks, that is it for this edition of Newswatch. Remember, you can find more of our news on the CBN News Channel anytime or online at cbnnews.com. From all of us here in the CBN News Channel and network, have a fantastic rest of the day.